On a cold February night in 2004, a young woman's car was found crashed on a quiet rural road in New Hampshire. The engine was still warm, the airbags deployed, but Maura Murray, the 21-year-old nursing student who had been behind the wheel, was gone. No footprints leading away from the car. No signs of struggle. No confirmed sighting since. It's been called the first mystery of the social media age. A case that captivated the internet long before Reddit and YouTube were filled with armchair detectives. This is the disappearance of Maura Murray. And 20 years later, we're still asking the same question. What really happened? Maura Murray was born on May 4th, 1982, in Hanson, Massachusetts, the fourth of 5 children in a close-knit Irish Catholic family. She was brilliant, excelling in school, track, and cross-country, quiet but competitive, driven. Her father, Fred Murray, was proud but also protective. He worked multiple jobs, and by all accounts, Maura admired his work ethic. Her mother, Lori, was known for her warmth, though by Maura's teenage years, her parents had divorced. Friends described Maura as shy but deeply loyal, the kind of friend who'd help you study until 3 a.m. and still show up early for morning practice. After high school, she entered the United States Military Academy at West Point, studying chemical engineering, a path few took lightly. But something changed during her time there. Rumors spread that Maura violated academy rules, possibly involving stolen goods. She quietly transferred to University of Massachusetts Amherst to study nursing. She wanted a fresh start. At UMass, Maura seemed to settle in well. She had a boyfriend, Billy Roche, a fellow West Point cadet now working with the Army in Oklahoma. They'd been together for 3 years, maintaining a long-distance relationship through calls and visits. By early 2004, Maura was excelling in her nursing program. On the surface, life looked promising. But beneath that calm surface, something was wrong. The week before her disappearance was chaotic and chillingly out of character. On February 5th, 2004, Maura was working the late shift at her campus security job. Around 1 a.m., she received a phone call. No one knows who was on the other end, but witnesses say Maura broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, repeating only one phrase, "My God, my God." Her supervisor had to walk her back to her dorm. The next day, she told her professor she'd be gone for a week due to a death in the family. There was no such death. Then, over the weekend, she visited her father, Fred. They went car shopping. She'd recently crashed her old car, and Fred wanted to help her find something reliable. That night, Maura borrowed his brand-new Toyota Corolla to go to a party with friends. But later that night, she crashed the car. Airbags deployed. $10,000 in damage. Fred wasn't angry, just worried. He told her they'd figure it out. But Maura seemed distraught, quiet. The next day, she dropped her father off at the airport, then withdrew $280 from an ATM and purchased $40 worth of alcohol, including a box of wine, a bottle of Kahlua, and vodka. Hours later, she packed her dorm room, neatly placing everything in boxes and removing the art from her walls. She also printed driving directions of Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, and Burlington, Vermont, both remote mountain regions. Then she emailed her professors. "I'll be out of town for about a week because of the death of my family." She also emailed her boyfriend. "I love you more than anyone. You are my everything." That was Monday, February 9th, 2004, the last day anyone would ever see Maura Murray. Around 7:25 p.m., residents along a dark stretch of Route 112, near the small town of Haverhill, New Hampshire, heard a loud thud. A neighbor looked out her window and saw a black satin sedan, Maura's car, lodged in a snowbank. A man named Butch Atwood, a local bus driver, stopped to check on her. He saw a young woman, alone, standing beside her car. She refused help, saying she'd already called AAA, but there was no cell service in that area. Butch drove home, just a few hundred feet away, and called the police. By the time officers arrived, less than 10 minutes later, Maura was gone. Her car was locked, airbags deployed, a cracked windshield, a box of wine, and a Coke bottle filled with what smelled like alcohol. Inside were her gloves, credit cards, school papers, directions to New Hampshire, and her favorite stuffed animal. But Maura herself had vanished into the night. By the next morning, Maura's family had been notified. Fred Murray drove up immediately, insisting that Maura wouldn't just run away. State police organized a massive search effort. Dogs, helicopters, volunteers. Tracking dogs picked up her scent, briefly, heading east in the crash site, about 100 yards. Then it vanished, completely gone. Some believe she got into another vehicle. Others suspected she ran into the woods and succumbed to the freezing cold. But no footprints, no clothing, no trace of body were ever found. The area had heavy snow that night. Temperatures dropped below freezing. And by the next morning, any footprints or evidence could have been covered. Fred Murray was convinced from day one this was no accident. Someone took his daughter. So many things didn't add up. Why tell her professors about a fake death in the family? Why withdraw all that cash and buy alcohol? Why pack up her dorm room? And where was she headed and why? The route she took wasn't the fastest way to Burlington or Bretton Woods. It was remote, winding, and sparsely populated. There were also reports of possible red trucks, mystery phone calls, and unconfirmed sightings in the following days. But every lead fizzled out. For years, the case remained frozen in time, suspended between two theories: that Maura ran away to start a new life, or that she met someone and something terrible happened. By the time the snow melted, spring revealed nothing. No clothes, no tire marks, no answers. It was as if Maura Murray had walked off the edge of the world. When Maura Murray vanished on February 9th, 2004, the search for her began almost immediately. But the investigation that followed would be defined by confusion, contradictions, and controversy. Police, family, and the public all seemed to be chasing different versions of the same mystery. And as the days turned into weeks, the strange new force entered the picture: the internet. It would change everything. In the hours after the crash, Sergeant Cecil Smith of the Haverhill Police Department took command of the scene. He described the Saturn as being badly damaged on the front end, airbags deployed, and the windshield cracked. Inside the vehicle, officers found an open box of Franzia wine, a partially filled Coke bottle that smelled of alcohol, Maura's school books, her driving directions, and her stuffed toy, a symbol of comfort she rarely traveled without. But there was no sign of Maura. No footprints in the snow. No tire tracks other than her own. Police initially assumed she was intoxicated and had fled the scene to avoid a DUI. They believed she'd returned by morning. But by sunrise, there was still no sign of her. By the next day, Maura's father, Fred Murray, arrived in New Hampshire, frantic and determined. He immediately challenged the idea that his daughter had simply run off. He told reporters, "My daughter would never run away. Somebody took her." Fred began searching on his own, walking the roads, handing out flyers and questioning neighbors. He clashed with local police, who believed Maura had likely left voluntarily. But Fred saw something else, a daughter who'd packed carefully, who left behind everything she needed to survive. Why would she take off into freezing woods without her coat, credit cards, or phone? The New Hampshire Fish and Game Department deployed search teams with cadaver and tracking dogs. The dogs followed Maura's scent from the driver's seat of her Saturn, then east along the road, about 100 yards, and then the scent abruptly ended. Search leaders said this suggested Maura had either been picked up by a passing vehicle or that she had left the road through an area already contaminated by responders. Either way, the trail was gone. That night, one neighbor, Faith Westman, reported seeing what she thought might have been a red pickup truck parked near the scene. Another local, Tim Westman, remembered the same, yet no red truck was ever identified. Later, online investigators would speculate endlessly. Was the driver the one who offered Maura a ride? Was he connected to her disappearance? Or was it just another random vehicle on a cold winter road? The problem was there were no clear records, no dash cams, and few witnesses. Just fragments of memory, replayed thousands of times online. As the official investigation unfolded, even the timeline began to blur. The 911 calls from neighbors came in around 7:27 p.m. Police arrived by 7:46 p.m. That 19-minute window became the most scrutinized period in modern true crime history. What happened in those minutes? Could Maura have been picked up? Did she walk into the forest and collapse from the cold? Or did someone already know she'd be on that road? The answers never came. By 2005, the case was already slipping into obscurity until a small group of online investigators reignited it. Message boards like Web Sleuths and early true crime forums began dissecting every known detail. They analyzed police logs, weather data, and even scanned old photos for reflections that might reveal hidden clues. Then came Reddit, YouTube, and blogs dedicated entirely to the case. Maura Murray became one of the first viral missing person cases in American internet history. The fascination was driven by contradictions. A young woman with no clear motive to disappear. A car accident that made no sense. And an investigation that left too many questions unanswered. People across the world felt like they knew her, like if they just stared at the evidence long enough, they could bring her home. As public attention grew, so did scrutiny of Maura's family, particularly her father, Fred. Some internet users accused him of knowing more than he revealed. Others claimed his behavior was consistent with grief and frustration at police inaction. Fred maintained his innocence in his mission, finding Maura. He would appear on countless TV programs, always repeating the same plea. All I want is my daughter back. The Murray family also faced tension with law enforcement. Fred claimed police refused to release certain records, like call logs and witness interviews, citing ongoing investigation. The distrust between the Murray family and the state police became a defining feature of the case. The internet soon divided into two main camps. The first believed Maura had run away, overwhelmed by school stress, the car crash, and possible personal struggles. They pointed to her unusual behavior in the days before, the fake family death, the alcohol purchase, the withdrawn cash. Perhaps, they said, she just wanted to disappear. The second camp believed foul play was involved, that Maura was abducted, either by a passing stranger or possibly someone she knew. Supporters of this theory pointed to the sudden end of her scent trail, the remote location, and the lack of physical evidence. Then came the hybrid theories, that Maura staged her disappearance to start over, that she met with someone from an online relationship, that she died accidentally in the woods. But her body was never recovered. None could be proven. All seemed plausible. Years later, investigators revisited the possibility that Maura had crashed her car earlier that same evening, before the Route 112 incident. There were reports of a similar vehicle spotted several miles east, seen briefly before police responded to the main scene. Some witnesses recalled an airbag deployment smell in the air, even before the 727 crash. If true, this could mean the Saturn had already sustained damage, and Maura had been driving erratically long before the final crash. But police records of any earlier incident have never surfaced. To this day, that second accident theory remains one of the case's strangest subplots. Cellular technology in 2004 was primitive by modern standards. Maura's last known phone activity came around 4:37 p.m., a call to a condo rental company in Bartlett, New Hampshire. She inquired about lodging for several days, but she never booked a stay. After that, no outgoing calls, no texts, no verifiable activity. Her phone records were eventually subpoenaed, but no new leads emerged. Some theorized that she had turned off her phone intentionally, to disappear without trace. Others believed her phone had been destroyed in the crash. No one knows. Investigators found a curious detail on Maura's computer. In the days before her disappearance, she had searched for rental cabins in New Hampshire and also directions to the Berkshires, a mountain region she loved. She also visited websites about drinking and driving penalties. What was she planning? A quiet escape? A new start? Or was she researching the aftermath of her recent car accident? The digital breadcrumbs hinted at planning, but not motive. By mid-2004, the trail had gone completely cold. The woods had been searched, rivers dredged. Hundreds of volunteers canvassed miles of rough terrain, but no trace of Maura ever surfaced. As the years passed, her story faded from nightly news, but not from the internet. Online sleuths continued to build massive archives, timelines, and maps. Some even visited the crash site, treating it like sacred ground. The white ribbon tied to a tree near the curve on Route 112 became a symbol of her absence. The Maura Murray case marked a turning point in how missing person cases were discussed. It was one of the first times digital communities directly influenced a real-world investigation. Leads discovered online were forwarded to police. Bloggers and podcasters interviewed witnesses. And the Murray family themselves began using media to keep Maura's story alive. Years later, her disappearance would inspire documentaries, podcasts, and books, all asking the same haunting question. Where did Maura go? In the end, what began as a local missing person case became something far larger, a cultural obsession, a mystery that no one could let go of. But the story doesn't end here, because in the years that followed, new witnesses emerged, strange discoveries were made, and other disappearances in the same region began to draw eerie parallels. By the spring of 2004, the name Maura Murray had become both a mystery and a warning. A young woman vanished without a trace, just miles from the White Mountains, one of the most isolated regions in the northeastern United States. But as the investigation deepened and internet detectives began mapping disappearances across the region, something unsettling emerged. Maura's case wasn't alone. In fact, it might have been part of a larger pattern. Stretching to the northern Appalachian region, from western Massachusetts through Vermont and up into New Hampshire, lies a series of small towns, mountain passes, and dense forests. Locals call it the Notch. To others, it's part of what's sometimes referred to as New England's disappearance corridor. In the early 2000s, this area saw a strange cluster of missing person cases, many involving young women, remote roads, and sudden vanishings. None of them connected officially. But to those who studied the timelines, the coincidences were impossible to ignore. Just 39 days after Maura disappeared, another young woman vanished. March 19, 2004, Montgomery, Vermont. 19-year-old Brianna Maitland finished a shift at the Black Lantern Inn, said goodbye to co-workers, and drove off alone in her 1985 Oldsmobile. She never made it home. The next morning, her car was found backed into the side of an abandoned farmhouse, the rear end smashed, the front lights still on. The scene looked eerily familiar. A single woman, a deserted road, an abandoned vehicle, and no sign of the driver. Her wallet, clothes, and ID were still inside. The doors unlocked. No footprints, no struggle, no body. And just like Maura, Brianna vanished. The similarities between the two cases were chilling. Both women were young, athletic, and independent. Both drove dark-colored sedans. Both crashed or left their vehicles at strange angles on rural roads. Both disappeared into the cold without a trace. And both cases occurred within a 100-mile radius, just 6 weeks apart. Authorities initially dismissed any link, insisting there was no evidence of a shared perpetrator. But online, the theories exploded. Some speculated a serial abductor was hunting along the Route 112 Vermont corridor. Others wondered if the two women might have known each other through mutual friends or social circles in New England. There's no proof they ever met, but their disappearances are now forever intertwined in the public's mind. The White Mountains of New Hampshire are beautiful and brutal. Thousands of hikers and travelers pass through every year, exploring the sweeping wilderness of the Presidential Range. But beneath that natural beauty lies danger, steep ravines, unpredictable weather, and miles of terrain where a single wrong turn can erase you. Since the 1970s, more than a dozen people have vanished in this region. Hikers, drivers, even experienced outdoorsmen without a trace. Some are later found miles from where they disappeared. Others, never at all. To some, these are tragic accidents. To others, they're part of a hidden pattern, one that Maura may have stumbled into. Experts in missing person psychology sometimes refer to cases like Maura's as voluntary disappearances, when an individual walks away from their life intentionally, often due to overwhelming stress or trauma. But those who knew Maura found the theory hard to believe. Yes, she had recent stress, the car crash, academic pressure, her relationship, but she also had plans, goals. She'd packed her dorm room neatly, yes, but she'd also left behind her textbooks for the new semester. Her nursing exams were coming up. Her father was visiting again that week. It didn't fit the profile of someone preparing to vanish forever, unless she didn't plan to vanish, unless something or someone forced her hand. Across forums and podcasts, researchers began building databases of missing women across New England. Some were last seen at gas stations, some on highways, some near ski resorts, just like the one Maura had printed directions to. The similarities kept growing. A chilling statistic surfaced. Between 1999 and 2006, at least 7 women under 30 disappeared within a 150-mile radius of Haverhill, New Hampshire, each under different circumstances, each leaving behind a life in progress. Each case is unsolved. To skeptics, this was a coincidence. To others, it was a trail. Among the many rumors surrounding Maura's disappearance, one stands out. The idea that she may have been meeting someone that night, an unnamed man Some say it was an online acquaintance. Others point to a friend from UMass or a co-worker from her nursing clinical. And then there are the darker whispers that she may have been stalked. None of these leads have ever been confirmed. But investigators did find something unusual. A call on Maura's phone records to a number registered to a man in Bartlett, New Hampshire, the same area where she'd looked up lodging. The man denied knowing her. Police never released his name. To this day, that call remains one of the case's quietest mysteries. Just north of the White Mountains lies Vermont's Northeast Kingdom, a region of vast forests, abandoned logging roads, and small, scattered towns. It's here that several other unexplained disappearances occurred over the years. In 1991, 14-year-old Annie Tuitt vanished after a school dance. In 2003, a college student, Tina Benoit, disappeared after a car broke down on a rural road. Later found just a few miles from a farmhouse. In 2004, of course, Brianna Maitland. Each case is different in detail, yet eerily similar in setting. It painted a picture of a region haunted by loss, where isolation could hide anything. As public fascination grew, one theory began to circulate, a terrifying possibility known among locals as the stranger in the woods. The theory suggests that an unknown individual, possibly a drifter or long-haul worker, could have targeted women along rural highways. The White Mountains sit near multiple interstate routes, corridors frequently used by truckers, seasonal laborers, and transient populations. Some retired investigators quietly admitted that this type of offender could move undetected, leaving no trace, no link, and no reason for local police to suspect a pattern. But without evidence, the theory remains just that, a chilling possibility. In 2006, 2 years after Maura disappeared, hikers in the Loon Mountain area, about 20 miles from the crash site, discovered a piece of fabric, partially buried in snow. Search teams were called in, but the object turned out to be unrelated. Still, it renewed attention on that stretch of forest. Over the years, there have been several searches around Loon Mountain and Swiftwater based on tips and cadaver dog hits, yet nothing conclusive was ever recovered. It was as though the landscape itself refused to give up its secrets. As the years went on, the list of missing persons in northern New England grew longer and more tangled. To some, Maura Murray's case is part of that web. To others, she's an isolated tragedy, magnified by public obsession. But the pattern of cars abandoned, young lives interrupted, and cases left cold still unsettles even the most rational investigators. Every pin represents a story unfinished. Every mile of forest, another question without an answer. Through it all, Maura's father never gave up. Fred Murray returned to New Hampshire countless times, organizing private searches and pushing for access to restricted land near the crash site. He filed freedom of information requests, spoke to journalists, and built alliances with online researchers. Year after year, he repeated the same message. Someone out there knows what happened. His determination inspired countless others, but also drew criticism from those who believed the case had grown too crowded, too speculative. But Fred didn't care about theories. He just wanted the truth. It's been over 20 years since Maura disappeared. In that time, the world has changed. Phones can now track every movement. Cars carry GPS logs. Surveillance cameras record nearly every street corner. But in 2004, those tools didn't exist. And so, her case remains trapped in a different era, a snapshot of a moment when one young woman could still vanish completely. For the Murray family, the ache never faded. Every few years, a new lead surfaces. A new search begins, and still nothing. Even today, the region where Maura disappeared continues to yield new mysteries. Hikers still go missing. Cars still found abandoned on frozen roads. Families still left without answers. To some, that's the nature of the wilderness, unpredictable, indifferent, and vast. To others, it's something darker, a reminder that Maura's story might not be unique, that she could be one of many. As the cold winds move across the mountains of New Hampshire, the story of Maura Murray echoes through every missing person flyer, every lonely highway, every family waiting for closure. Her disappearance opened a door, one that revealed how fragile the line is between the ordinary and the unexplainable. But the story isn't over, because in the final chapter, we'll uncover the most recent developments, new discoveries, DNA results, and a haunting question of what might still be hidden beneath the snow. It's been years now, 2 decades of waiting, searching, and wondering. And yet, if you stand on Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire, on a quiet February night, you can still feel it. The stillness, the weight of something left unfinished, the silence of a question that's never been answered. What happened to Maura Murray? After Maura's disappearance, police followed every lead they could find. They combed through the woods, rivers, and abandoned cabins. Helicopters flew overhead. Search dogs tracked her scent into the woods, before suddenly losing it about 100 feet from the crash site, as if she simply vanished. But searchers noticed something else. In certain spots, dogs behaved strangely, circling, barking, then stopping cold. No tracks in the snow, no sign of a struggle. Nothing. That nothingness became the defining feature of this case. Not what was found, but what wasn't. With no clear evidence, theories began to spread like wildfire, each one trying to fill the void the facts had left behind. Some believed Maura ran away, that she wanted to start a new life far from the pressure and expectations. Others believed she met with foul play, perhaps picked up by a passing driver who saw an opportunity. And some believed something darker, that she may have staged the entire thing, and that the crash was a deliberate cover for her disappearance. The disappearance of Maura Murray remains one of America's most haunting cold cases. No suspect, no body, no closure. Every winter, people visit that lonely stretch of Route 112, leaving flowers, candles, and handwritten notes under the street sign. Some leave them for Maura, others for the part of themselves that still believe she might be out there somewhere. Because deep down, that's the pull of this story. It's not just about a missing woman. It's about the human need to know, to find meaning in silence, to bring warmth to the cold. Maybe Maura's story isn't meant to have an ending. Maybe it's meant to remind us that not every mystery is meant to be solved, and that sometimes the unknown is what keeps us searching for truth, for understanding, for peace. Because in this case, the cold never ends. If this story stayed with you, consider subscribing for more unsolved mysteries. Every view, every share keeps forgotten cases alive just a little longer.